Before Lucifer's fall made headlines, another rebellion shook heaven. One quieter, one more intimate, one the church decided you shouldn't remember. The Watchers weren't cast down in fire and fury. They descended by choice, driven not by pride but by desire. And what they did on earth didn't just break divine law, it rewrote the human story itself. The Book of Enoch preserves their names, their crimes, their punishment. But the church banned it, not because it lied, because it told too much. It proved that angels could fall for reasons more human than divine, and that knowledge itself could corrupt paradise. This is the story they buried. Long before the fall, before the choice that would seal their fate, the Watchers were trusted. They weren't archangels carrying swords of flame. They weren't thrones or dominions enforcing cosmic order. The Watchers had a quieter role, more subtle, more dangerous. According to the Book of Enoch, an ancient Jewish text dating to around 300 BC, these angels were dispatched by God to monitor humanity in its earliest, most fragile stages. The world was still young. Mankind had just begun to walk upright, build shelters, raise families. It was a delicate time, full of wonder but also risk. Heaven, it seems, wasn't willing to leave that new creation entirely alone. So the Watchers were stationed on earth, not in glory, not on thrones. Close enough to see, far enough not to touch. They weren't meant to interfere, only to keep watch. Think of them as divine sentinels, assigned to ensure the world didn't spiral into ruin, but warned never to cross certain lines. Their name in Aramaic, Irin, means those who are awake, always vigilant, always watching. In later traditions, they were called the Gregori, guardians who saw everything, felt little, and moved rarely. Genesis 6 hints at their existence in just 4 verses. It never uses the word watcher, but it calls them the sons of God. And it tells us this: they saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and took them as wives. That's all. No names, no consequences, no details, just a fracture in the biblical narrative, a crack the church never wanted you to examine too closely. But the Book of Enoch expands what Genesis conceals. It confirms that angels descended and defiled themselves with mortals. It names them, it records their oath, it traces the catastrophe that followed. Furthermore, the Book of Jubilees echoes the claim, warning of the judgment to come. These weren't rogue angels acting alone. This was organized, deliberate, 200 of them. Their point of descent was said to be Mount Hermon, a real mountain range straddling ancient Israel, Lebanon, and Syria. According to Enoch, it was here the Watchers gathered and made their pact. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. For now, picture them still pure, 200 angels stationed just outside the world of men, invisible, silent, observing the rise of early civilization. They watched humans gather firewood and build shelters. They watched them learn to speak, to worship, to fight. They watched them laugh, they watched them mourn, and eventually they watched too closely. They weren't meant to love, they weren't meant to want. But proximity does strange things, even to angels. The longer they stayed, the harder it became to draw the line between observing and desiring. They saw beauty in human women. They saw life, passion, mortality, things heaven didn't possess. And slowly, silently, the temptation grew. It was Samjaza, one of the Watchers' leaders, who finally voiced what the rest were too afraid to say. According to Enoch, he told them plainly, "I fear you will not indeed agree to do this deed, and I alone shall have to pay the penalty of a great sin." And so, on Mount Hermon, beneath the stars they had watched for eons, they bound themselves by oath, 200 angels, one decision, no turning back. They made a pact, sworn under heaven and sealed with the weight of eternity. If one fell, they would all fall. If one took a human wife, they all would. The first sin wasn't pride, it wasn't wrath, it was desire. The kind that begins in silence and ends with an oath that echoes through history. What happened between those lines of Genesis would force God to reset creation itself. They descended, not in rebellion, but in longing. The Watchers came down from their posts, took human wives, and walked among humanity like gods made flesh. For a time, it must have felt like paradise, but what they brought with them wasn't love. It was heaven's arsenal, knowledge humanity was never meant to possess. Not yet, perhaps not ever. The Watchers didn't arrive empty-handed. They carried with them the full weight of celestial wisdom, secrets of the stars, the properties of metal and plant, the structure of reality itself. In heaven, that knowledge was sacred, carefully regulated, held back until creation was ready. But once the Watchers descended, they shared it freely. Not to uplift mankind, but to impress, to influence, to remain indispensable. And that's where the real damage began. According to the Book of Enoch, each Watcher revealed a different kind of forbidden wisdom. Taken individually, they might have seemed like small advancements. Together, they accelerated human development in ways that were neither natural nor safe. Azazel was the worst offender. He taught men the art of metallurgy, showing them how to forge swords, daggers, shields, and armor from bronze and iron. This wasn't just craft, it was dominance. Before Azazel, conflicts were settled with stones and fists. After him, battles became organized slaughter. War escalated. Tribes didn't just fight, they massacred. Power could now be wielded by those who controlled the tools of death. But Azazel didn't stop there. He also revealed the secrets of adornment, jewelry, cosmetics, the art of making oneself beautiful. These gifts bred vanity and desire. They turned appearance into currency. Beauty became a weapon as dangerous as any blade, fueling envy, seduction, and manipulation. While Azazel reshaped Earth's physical tools, another Watcher turned humanity's eyes to the heavens. Kokabel taught the secrets of astrology, revealing the movements of stars, the cycles of celestial bodies, the rhythm of cosmic time. To early humans, this was transformative. The heavens, once an unknowable expanse, became a map. Seasons could be predicted, lands could be navigated, events could be foreseen. But with that knowledge came a darker temptation. The stars weren't just guides anymore, they became tools of control. Kings consulted astrologers before wars, priests manipulated eclipses to consolidate power. The divine mystery Kokabel sought to share was corrupted into chains of fate. Armoros brought enchantments and curses, introducing humanity to sorcery. Magic, once hidden in shadow, became a weapon wielded by those seeking influence over nature and each other. Spells could heal, but they could also harm. Knowledge of plants could cure disease or induce death. What was shared as wisdom became twisted into manipulation. Then there was Penemu, keeper of secrets, teacher of the written word. Before him, humanity relied on oral tradition. Stories were fleeting, lost with each generation. Penemu introduced writing, ink, the ability to preserve ideas indefinitely. With this gift came the power of memory, culture, history. Nevertheless, writing was a double-edged gift. Truth could be preserved, but so could lies. Propaganda could be etched in stone. Conspiracies could be plotted in ink. The past could be rewritten by those who controlled the pen. Other Watchers taught their own specialties. Samjaza revealed root-cutting and medicinal manipulation. Kazdeja shared knowledge described chillingly as the smiting of the embryo, unnatural control over life and death itself. This wasn't knowledge meant for human hands. The result wasn't enlightenment, it was corruption. With weapons came organized warfare. With beauty came vanity. With astrology came false prophecy. With writing came propaganda. With magic came coercion. The Watchers didn't just blur the line between heaven and earth, they erased it entirely. Humanity, still in its infancy, was handed the tools of gods without the wisdom or restraint to use them. And the worst part, the people welcomed it. They saw the Watchers as benefactors, divine kings, messengers of power. They followed them, worshipped them, built their lives around the gifts they'd been given. But those gifts were never blessings, they were accelerants. In trying to share the secrets of heaven, the Watchers didn't elevate humanity, they destabilized it. This wasn't just broken law, it was a broken world. And the proof was already growing in the bellies of their human wives. If this hidden history is opening your eyes to what Scripture conceals, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Because what comes next, the biological consequence of their rebellion, is something the Church tried even harder to erase. The unions produced something that shouldn't exist. When angels bred with humans, the result wasn't just unusual offspring, it was a violation of creation itself. The Nephilim. Giants, yes, but something far more disturbing than mere size. They were hybrids, category violations, beings too great for earth, but too flawed for heaven. Their very existence was proof that a divine boundary had been shattered. Genesis 6:4 can only describe them as mighty men of old, men of renown. But the Hebrew tells a darker story. Nephilim comes from Naphal, meaning to fall. They were the fallen ones, not spiritually, but genetically. A corruption of the human template God had designed, and they inherited the worst of both realms. Angelic power combined with human greed. Celestial strength twisted by mortal appetite. The Book of Enoch describes how the Nephilim consumed everything. First crops, then cattle, then humans themselves. They began to sin against birds, beasts, reptiles, and fish. Eventually, they devoured one another's flesh. These weren't just physical threats, they were moral corruption given form, walking reminders that divine order had been violated. The earth groaned under their weight. Their appetites were insatiable, their violence was systematic. They turned predation into culture, domination into worship. How does perfection birth such monstrosities unless the seed of corruption predates the garden itself? The Nephilim proved that some mixings were never meant to happen, that certain lines exist for reasons beyond human understanding. And here's what makes their story even more unsettling. They returned. Numbers 13:33 reports Nephilim existing after the flood. Joshua fights their descendants. David kills Goliath, who came from a family of giants. How did the drowned return unless their essence transcended mere flesh? Unless what made them Nephilim wasn't just biology, but something deeper, something that survived even God's reset. Cross-cultural memory preserves what Scripture only hints at. The Greek Titans, towering beings of immense power who defied the gods. The Norse Jotun, fierce and colossal, locked in eternal conflict with divine forces. Native American legends speak of giants who once roamed the land, shaping mountains with their footsteps. These aren't coincidences. They're fragments of the same memory, echoing across cultures that never contacted each other. But amid the chaos, one man stood unmoved. Enoch. He wasn't a king. He wasn't a warrior. He was a scribe. A quiet figure who, according to the text, walked with God. In a world that had lost its balance, he remained steady, untouched by the false gods around him, unmoved by the madness they had brought. And when the Watchers finally began to fear what was coming, when they realized their actions hadn't just broken divine law, but provoked divine judgment, it was to Enoch they turned. They didn't dare speak to God themselves. They had fallen too far. But perhaps Enoch could speak on their behalf. He became their messenger, their last chance at mercy. And he agreed. Not for their sake, but because judgment was already closing in and someone had to carry the truth. Enoch's journey wasn't physical, it was visionary. The texts describe him being taken through the realms of heaven by angelic guides like Uriel and Raphael, ascending through layers of light and fire until he stood before the presence of the Most High. What he saw there terrified him. He beheld prisons of flame reserved for angels, mountains that wept blood, stars bound in chains. He saw the fate that awaited the Watchers and the judgment that would fall not just on them, but on their children and even the earth itself. When he returned, the Watchers gathered, trembling, desperate. They begged him to read their petition aloud to God once more, to plead, to argue, to apologize. But it was too late. The answer Enoch brought back was not forgiveness. It was finality. There would be no mercy. The petition had been denied. Heaven had heard their pleas, but the sentence had already been written. The Watchers had not merely broken a law, they had rewritten the course of creation, and for that they would be made an example. The judgment came swiftly, and when it arrived, it would reshape the world. The judgment came swiftly. According to the Book of Enoch, God gave his command to 4 mighty archangels, Uriel, Raphael, Gabriel, and Michael. each with a specific task in the cleansing of creation. This wasn't anger, it was surgery, the removal of something that threatened to unravel everything God had built. Azazel was singled out first. While Samjaza had led the Watcher's descent, Azazel had taught humanity how to craft instruments of war. Swords, knives, armor. He had introduced the arts of seduction, cosmetics, and vanity. He had taught mankind how to look powerful and how to become deadly. For this, his punishment was uniquely severe. Raphael was commanded to bind him hand and foot and cast him into the wilderness of Dudael, a scorched, barren land described as jagged and pitch black. There, Azazel would remain, sealed beneath the earth, covered with sharp stones, buried in darkness until the final judgment. His name would forever be associated with sin itself. In the book of Leviticus, the Hebrew ritual of the scapegoat, where one goat was sent into the wilderness carrying the sins of the people, was said to be sent to Azazel. He became more than a fallen angel. He became the embodiment of transgression. The rest of the Watchers, including Samjaza, were punished together. God commanded Michael to bind them, to strip them of their heavenly form, and to cast them into the depths, into an abyss beneath the mountains of the earth. There they would be sealed in darkness, unable to rise, their punishment extending not just through time, but until Judgment Day itself. They would not die. They would not be redeemed. They would simply wait, in silence, in shame, in chains. But the Watcher's punishment wasn't the end of the cleansing. The Nephilim posed an even greater threat, too powerful for human armies to defeat, too numerous to contain. Their very existence was an affront to the natural order. And so came the flood, a cataclysmic reset, washing away what never should have existed. The earth was cleansed, the giants drowned. Creation began again, yet something persisted. The Nephilim's bodies decomposed in diluvian mud, but their essence remained. The Book of Enoch reveals what Genesis conceals. The spirits that have gone forth from the souls of their flesh shall be called evil spirits, and on the earth shall be their dwelling. These weren't fallen angels. Angels had their own judgment, their own chains, their own abyss. These were disembodied Nephilim, hybrid souls with no afterlife designed for their category-defying existence. Where does a being go when it belongs to neither heaven nor earth? They became wanderers between worlds, parasites seeking hosts, memories seeking flesh to remember through. The Book of Jubilees records Noah's prayer for their complete destruction, but God allowed 1/10 to remain under Satan's authority. Why preserve any? So that they might execute the power of Satan on earth. These spirits became the mechanism of temptation, the whispers that make humans doubt, the oppression that makes salvation necessary. But here's why this story terrified the church. If the Watchers fell for desire, not pride, then angelic beings were vulnerable to human weakness. If knowledge was freely shared outside institutional channels, then priests weren't necessary as intermediaries. If consciousness was the real gift, then why was seeking it called sin? If multiple creation attempts existed, with resets and failures, then the linear narrative of creation, fall, redemption became complicated, dangerously complicated. The early church faced a choice: preserve the complex, layered narrative where creation included failures and beings that predated humanity, or simplify everything into a single story where humans are central, unique, and individually responsible for evil's existence. Which version gives religious institutions more control? The Council of Nicaea didn't just choose which books became canon, they chose which reality became orthodox. The Book of Enoch, read by Jesus' generation and quoted by the Apostle Jude, was excluded, not because it contradicted Scripture, because it revealed too much. It showed that even angels could fall for reasons more human than divine. It proved that knowledge could be shared freely, without permission, without institutional mediation. The suppression was systematic. They couldn't erase the Watchers completely. The story was too embedded in Scripture, too necessary for certain passages to make sense, so they deployed a different strategy. Allegorization. The Nephilim became symbols of pride. The Watchers became metaphors for temptation. Literal beings were transformed into safe lessons. When did they become metaphors, And who decided they were safer that way? But you can bind an angel, you can ban a book, you can't unwrite a story that's already echoed through every culture on Earth. The Watchers may be chained beneath the mountains, but their influence bleeds through every mystery we can't explain. Look closely at the ancient world, and you'll find their fingerprints everywhere. Not in metaphor, in stone, in precision, in knowledge that shouldn't exist according to the timeline we've been given. Consider the Great Pyramids of Giza. Massive limestone blocks, some weighing over 70 tons, transported across distances and positioned with astronomical precision. The pyramids align perfectly with the cardinal points. They mirror celestial events like the solstices. How did a civilization without modern tools achieve what modern engineers struggle to replicate? The answer we're given is human ingenuity and determination. But what if they had help? What if early builders were guided by beings who understood celestial mechanics because they came from the heavens? Then there's Baalbek in Lebanon. The Temple of Jupiter sits atop megalithic stones that weigh over 1,000 tons each, not hundreds, thousands. Modern cranes can barely lift such weights, yet ancient builders quarried them, transported them, and placed them with seamless precision. The stones fit together so perfectly that you can't slip a blade between them. Who taught them that? Göbekli Tepe in Turkey is perhaps the most disturbing evidence. Carbon dated to 11,000 years ago, it predates agriculture itself. It predates writing. It predates everything we associate with civilization. Yet there it stands, intricately carved stone pillars weighing up to 20 tons. Arranged in complex circular patterns, according to official history, humans at this time were nomadic hunter-gatherers. They had no mathematics, no architecture, no organization. How did they build a temple complex that rivals anything constructed thousands of years later? Unless someone taught them. Unless the knowledge came from somewhere else, the precision of ancient astronomy carries the same unsettling signature. Stonehenge aligns with celestial events. The Mayan calendar calculates cosmic cycles with accuracy that rivals modern computers. Babylonian star charts map constellations with detail that shouldn't be possible without telescopes. Kokobel's fingerprints on every ancient observatory, knowledge of the heavens shared before humanity was supposed to possess it. Cross-cultural flood myths preserve the same memory. Every continent remembers the deluge. Every culture remembers giants before it. Greek titans, Norse Jotun, Native American legends of beings who shaped mountains. These aren't variations of Noah's story borrowed and corrupted. They're fragments of the same event, witnessed and recorded by survivors across the world. Collective memory or collective truth. Modern interpretations only deepen the mystery. Ancient astronaut theorists suggest the Watchers weren't angels, but advanced beings from another world. Divine knowledge or misunderstood technology. The Nazca lines in Peru, massive geoglyphs visible only from the air, created by a people who never achieved flight. Who were they signaling? Who taught them to mark the Earth for eyes in the sky? Hollow Earth theories whisper that the Watchers are still down there. Imprisoned beneath the mountains, yes, but not destroyed. Legends of Agartha and Shambhala describe hidden realms of advanced knowledge beneath the surface. Subterranean civilizations that possess wisdom from before the flood. What if these aren't fantasies, but fragmented memories of where the fallen were sealed? Some even suggest the Watchers' teachings were encoded into human DNA itself, a kind of genetic memory waiting to activate. The rapid advancement of the past few centuries, from the Industrial Revolution to space exploration, as their programming finally awakening. Are we rediscovering what was taught or remembering what was always hidden inside us? The Book of Enoch says the Watchers are imprisoned until the day of judgment. That means they're still there, waiting, bound in darkness beneath the earth, but not gone, not defeated, just paused. And if Judgment Day releases them, what happens then? Were they defeated or simply delayed? The Watchers' story was buried because it revealed an uncomfortable truth. That paradise was corrupted not by human rebellion alone, but by divine desire. That knowledge was freely given before it was forbidden. That angels could fall for reasons more human than we're comfortable admitting. That consciousness itself was the gift, and it came from beings who chose earth over heaven. The church needed you to believe salvation required their permission. But the Watchers proved something more dangerous, that humans could access divine knowledge directly, that boundaries could be crossed, that the gap between mortal and divine was thinner than doctrine claimed, and that truth couldn't be allowed to survive. They're still chained beneath the mountains, the texts say, bound in darkness until judgment. But what if that judgment isn't about punishment? What if it's about awakening? The Watchers fell once. The question isn't whether they existed. It's whether they're rising again, through every mystery we can't explain, every boundary we dare to cross, every forbidden truth we refuse to bury. What do you believe is still hidden beneath the surface? Drop your theory in the comments below. If this story opened your eyes to what the church erased, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because the secrets they buried are the ones that change everything.